Okay, so let us start. So hello guys, I hope you all are doing very well. Welcome back to this 6-day bootcamp on operating system arranged by Access. It's the day 4 and my name is Suyash Savji and today we're gonna see a concept called deadlocks in operating system. Okay, so let us see. So let's see what today's action plan is. First of all, we will see what is deadlock, the introduction to deadlock. And deadlock is in the name that some situation we shouldn't be in, our operating system shouldn't be in. So what is the necessary conditions for deadlock to happen? And if deadlock happens or before happening of deadlock, how can we handle it? And then we will see something called Banker's algorithm. You should star mark this. Banker's algorithm is very important. This Banker algorithm is very important. And then we'll see something called a resource allocation graph, and then resource allocation technique that is used by operating system to distribute the resources to the processes. And at the last, we will see deadlock detection in distributed system, right? So let us start. The first thing is introduction to deadlock. What it says, a process in operating system uses different resources and uses resourcing in a following way. For example, if there is a process running in a CPU and it wants to access a particular resource, for example, CPU, printer, or monitor. So how they deal with it? First of all, process requests the operating system that I want to access the particular resource, and after requesting, if the resource is free, operating system assigns the particular resource to that process. So after request, it use the particular resource, and when the process gets completed or it gets preempt, it just releases the resource. Okay, it is the general way how it works. So what is deadlock? Deadlock is a situation where a set of processes are blocked because each process is holding a resource and waiting for another resource acquired by some other process. So before diving deep into the definition, I want you all to imagine the scenario. If you want to open an account in your nearest bank, you go to that bank and ask that particular manager or clerk that I want to open the account. So the manager says, cool, just studies, deposit 500 rupees and then we will open your account. But you are saying, first open my account and then I will deposit 500 rupees. So, but the manager is of course stubborn. He's saying, no, first of all, just give me 500 rupees, deposit it, and then we will open your account. So in this situation, you and that manager is waiting for some event to happen from opposite side. You are waiting for the manager to open your account, and the manager is waiting that for you to deposit 500 rupees. Okay. So there is another scenario. Consider there is only one rail track and there are two trains facing opposite to them. Okay. So in this situation, no train can move, of course, without accident. Okay. So these are the situation. These are deadlocks that both the processes are waiting for some event to happen, but it is not happening, and it will not happen. So the same situation occurs in operating system when the two processes are blocked because each process is holding a resource that is we'll see by example. Each process is holding a resource and waiting for another resource acquired by some other process. For example, this. Okay, this is process P1 and the process P1 is already acquiring the resource 1, and if resource 1 is assigned to process P1, for example, if resource 1 is monitor or CPU, it is already assigned to process 1. And what process 1 is saying, to get completed, I want resource 2. If I get resource 2, I already have resource 1, then I will get completed. But this resource 2 is already allocated to process 2. And what process 2 is saying, I already have resource 2. If you give me resource 1, I will get completed. So in this situation, process 1 is holding resource 1. Process 2 is holding resource 2. So this is a kind of deadlock that you can't move further from here. There is no event can happen because process 1 is waiting process 2 for releasing its resource 2, and same with the process 1, right? So I'm saying it is a kind of deadlock in operating system. It is a kind of deadlock. It is not exact deadlock. because for exactly deadlock to happen, there are 4 necessary conditions that our system should fulfill. So what are those conditions? The necessary conditions for deadlock to happen in the system. First one is mutual exclusion. Okay. What mutual exclusion says, mutual exclusion means whatever resource you are using, that resource must be used in mutually exclusive way. So what that means, consider you have a system or you have a resource that can be shared by multiple processes. Okay. So in this situation, if resource 1 is at one time is shared by multiple processes, process 1 and process 2. So if it is shareable by 2 processes, there is no question of deadlock, because at the same time process 1 can use resource 1 and process 2 can use resource 1. Okay. So in this situation, what process 2 will do, process 2 will not wait for resource 1. It will directly get completed because it is shareable, and after process 2 is completed, it will release resource 2, and after that process 1 will get completed. So there is no deadlock. So to deadlock to happen, the mutual exclusion should be there. That is, the resources should not be shareable. Okay, I hope you get this. The second one is hold and wait. What hold and wait is? The same situation. The hold and wait is the process 1 is holding resource 1 and process 2 is holding resource 2. If process 2 is requesting for resource 1, process 1 is not releasing it. That is called hold and wait. So this situation should happen. This situation should be there to deadlock to happen. Okay. The third one is no preemption. So by now you should know what preemption is. I will tell you briefly. The preemption is basically saving the context of particular process and pausing it and taking it back to the ready queue. Okay. So when it is taken back to the ready queue, all the resources that are allocated to that processes are taken back by the operating system. So if I say there is a process 1 and operating system preempts it, that means pauses it. So the resource 1 allocated to the process 1 is taken back, right? And after the resource 1 is taken back, it is given to process 2. So process 2 already has resource 2. Now it gets resource 1 and it gets completed. And after preemption, after some time, the process 1 will be completed by resource 1 and resource 2. Okay. So this is called preemption. So there should not be any preemption by the operating system for the deadlock to happen, because if preemption occurs, there is not condition for deadlock. There is no question for deadlock. The last one is circular wait. So what is circular wait? Again, we will go to the same diagram. The circular wait is, this is process 1, and this process 1 is asking for resource 2, but this resource 2 is accessed by process 2, and the process 2 is asking for resource that is held by process 1, but the process 1 already is assigned by resource 1. So this is a kind of circular thing, circular wait. Okay, so this condition should occur to deadlock to happen. So there are briefly 4 conditions. If all 4 conditions are satisfied, only then and then I can say there is a deadlock in my system. Okay, I hope you get this. Okay, so by now we know what is deadlock, and this is the situation we should avoid, and this is not very likely situation. This is not very situation that we want. Okay, so how to handle the deadlock in our system? There are briefly four processes by which you can handle the deadlock. The first one is deadlock ignorance, also called ostrich method. Deadlock prevention, deadlock avoidance, it applies Banker's algorithm. And the fourth one is deadlock detection and recovery. Okay, so we'll see one by one what are they. First of all, let's see what is deadlock ignorance. So deadlock ignorance simply says that just ignore the deadlock that is happening in your system. But isn't that funny? We are ignoring something that we shouldn't be ignoring, really. But yes, our normal operating system or Windows or Linux, any operating system, does it very widely. Because in our system, it has happened to you and me and all of us. Our operating system gets in deadlock. We say my computer has hanged. Okay, so this hanging situation is sometimes called by deadlock. So one can ask why there is no full-fledged algorithm to handling with deadlock. Okay, it's a normal question. It is illogical to just illogical to say there is no algorithm to handle deadlock. So whenever your operating system is hanged, what you do? We generally implement the most Indian method. We just power off our computer and restart it. Okay, and this is the best way to handle the deadlock. Why is it? Why there is no algorithm to handle deadlock in operating system? So its answer is very simple and logical. What programmer says, deadlock is very rare situation. Okay, deadlock happens like once in a year and once in some years. So if it is very rare, and if you write a bulky program and bulky algorithm and assemble it into operating system, the more bulkier the operating system gets, the less it well performs. Okay, so the performance is affected very badly if you add the more code to the operating system. So imagine as a user, you will tolerate once in a year restarting your operating system than operating system which is performing very slowly. Okay, you can imagine as a user. So as it is very rare situation, there is no code written in operating system to handle the deadlock in deadlock ignorance. So this is it. Ignoring the deadlock in your system because of rare nature of deadlock, and writing deadlock handling program may affect your operating system performance. That's why we don't write any algorithm or code in operating system. Okay, so ostrich method, why is it called ostrich method? I guess you know when what ostrich does when a storm comes. It just dumps his head into a sand and pretends like there is no storm. So the same thing we are doing here. We are just ignoring the deadlock. We are pretending like there is no deadlock in the system and just restarting our system. So in the same case, that's why the method is called ostrich method. Okay. So after deadlock ignorance, there is second thing is deadlock prevention. Right. So I'm saying if for deadlock to happen, there are four necessary conditions: mutual exclusion, no preemption, hold and wait, and circular wait. So if I'm saying if all the four situations are satisfied, then and only then the deadlock will happen. So on the other hand, I can say this: if I negate any one of this, if I negate the mutual exclusion, or if I negate the no preemption, or any one of them, or all of four, you can save our system from deadlock just by negating one of them, right? So in deadlock prevention, we just negate one of this situation. So for example, how to negate this, we will discuss one by one. For mutual exclusion, to negate mutual exclusion, first of all, what mutual exclusion says is there should not be any shareable resource in your system. So what I did is, for example, I have only one CPU. And I introduced a distributed system. There are multiple CPUs in the system. So processes can share the CPU at the same time. Okay. So it is done for the CPU. But the problem is not all the resources are shareable. For example, printer is not shareable. If multiple users are requesting for printing process, it will execute it one by one. Okay, so that's why mutual exclusion, negating mutual exclusion is not very practical way to perform. But still, the second one is no preemption. So we have already seen that in round robin algorithm, we introduce a time quantum system in which we decide up to what time we will execute a particular process. So if we introduce the no preemption system, we can negate the no preemption. Okay. For example, if process P1 is running and holding the resource R1 and P2 with R2. So if we say just P1, just preempt P1, okay. So it will be sent back to the ready queue, and remember the states, ready state and all. And R1 resource 1 will be taken back from the process 1, and that means the process 2 will get executed, and after process 2, execution of process 2, process 1 will be executed. So this is all about no preemption. So hold and wait. Well, hold and wait is interesting. What hold and wait says, pre-allocate all the needful resources. For example, my process P1 is in the ready queue, and process P1 before starting execution, process says I need a resource R1, R2, and R3. So what operating system will do? Operating system will pre-allocate these resources to the process before executing the process. So it is we don't want that, because we don't want all the We don't want all the resources to assigned to only one process and all other processes are waiting. That's not how the operating systems work. Okay, so this hold and wait is of course is very non-practical. And the last one is circular wait. Okay, the what circular wait is saying, if I have the processes P1 and P2, okay, and where there are multiple resources, I have R1, R2, R3, and R4. I will number them. Okay, so what circular wait says, a process can request in increasing order only. Consider this is process 1 and this is process 2. What process 1 is saying, I want to access resource number 1. Okay, we will give resource number 1. Then process 1 is saying, I want resource number 3. Okay, we will give it resource number 3 to the process 1. Then process 2 is saying, I want resource number 3. Okay, we will give it. But now if process 2 is saying, I want resource number 1, we won't give it, because it is not a ascending order. The statement is the process can only request in increasing order. So we can't assign the process number resource number 1 to the second process. So we are just negating this block. We are just removing this arrow in the circular wait remover. Okay. So these are the 4 broad methods which are used in deadlock prevention. But let me tell you that they are very impractical, and most practical method is to ignore the deadlock. Okay, the next thing is deadlock avoidance. So there is something called Banker's algorithm we use in deadlock avoidance. We will see in very detail what is Banker algorithm and all. So we will just skip it for now. Okay, the next thing is deadlock detection and recovery. Consider there is a deadlock already exists in your system and we have to detect it. So there are multiple methods to detect if there is a deadlock in your system or not. For example, resource allocation graph or Banker's algorithm table and all. So once you detect the deadlock in your system, you have to run your recovery system. For example, you can just kill the process, or you can just preempt the resource, that is resource can be taken back from the process. And this deadlock detection and recovery is very complex and vast topic, and you don't have to worry much about how the recovery system works and how we actually do all these things, how to detect and how to recover. So it is just out of the scope of this session, and you don't have to worry much about this concept. Okay, so moving further, see, this is just star market. It would be good if you have a pen and paper, because we will be solving a numerical now. Okay, so what Banker algorithm says is, it is a type of deadlock avoidance, by the way. It says is, the Banker's algorithm is a resource allocation and deadlock avoidance algorithm that tests for safety by simulating the allocation of predetermined maximum possible amounts of all resources, then makes an S-state check to test for possible activities before deciding whether allocation should be allowed to continue. So it is kind of very complex definition. So to make it simple, we will just see an example, and by example, we will get all the concept. Okay. Okay, so consider this example. You have a system, and in system there are process P0, P1, P2, P3, and P4. These are 5 processors running in your CPU, consider. Okay, so this A, B, and C are resources. For example, A is CPU, B is memory, and C is a printer, for example. And we have total instances of A 10, and 5 instances of B, and 7 instances of C. Instances in the same number, we have 10 number of A's, 5 number of B's, and 7 number of C's. Okay, so this is just a number, and A, B, C are the resources. So what is allocation block means, if I have a process P0 and a process P0 has already allocated some resources, we have already given 0 instances of A to P0, 1 instance of B to P0, and 0 instances of C to P0. Okay, similarly all of this, right? And what process P0 is saying, to get completely executed, I want 7 instances of A, 5 instances of B, and 3 instances of C. Okay, but we have already given 0, 1, 0. So how many more resources we have to give? That is covering remaining need. Okay, so the remaining instances of A that P0 wants is 7 minus 0, 7, of B 5 minus 1, 4, and C is 3, right? Okay, so this is the remaining need of P0. And similarly, the remaining need of P1 is 3 minus 2, 2 minus 0, and 2 minus 0. And P2 is 9 minus 3, 0 minus 0, 2 minus 2. And you get it, okay? So this is the remaining need, okay? I will repeat once again what we did is, this resource allocation means you have already allocated resources A, B, C in these instances to process P0 to P4, okay? For example, for P2, you have allocated 3 instances of A, 0 instances of B, and 2 instances of C to the P2, okay? And what P2 is saying, to get completely executed, I want 9 instances of A, 0 instances of B, and 2 instances of C. So we still have to give P2 6 instances of A, 0 instances of B, and 0 instances of C. And see, we have 10 instances of A, 5 of B, and 7 of C. And we are already allocated 7 of A, 2 of B, and 5 of C. So how many available resources we have? We have 10 minus 7, 3, 5 minus 2, 3, and 7 minus 5, 2. Available resources, available instances of A, B, C respectively. So we will fill this in available block. Okay. So now we have our block ready here. Now let me explain what we actually have to do. We have to check if there is any sequence exist in P0 to P4, by which if we go, by which we execute the processes, we will not face the deadlock situation. That means in our available resources, we have to just accommodate, or we have to just fulfill the needs of all the processes. If we could do that, then we won't face the deadlock. Otherwise, we will. So let us see how to do it actually. Okay. So see here, in available block, we have 3 instances of A, 3 of B, and 2 of C. And we will first check for P0. What P0 is saying, give me 7 of A, 4 of B, and 3 of C. But we don't have actually this many. So we can't actually fulfill the need of P0. So we will just ignore P0 for some times, and we will go further to P1. Now we'll check for P1. Can we fulfill the need of P1? Yes, we can, because we have 3, 3, 2, and it needs lesser than what we have. So we can definitely provide its needs. So after we provide it with the 1 instances of A, 2 of B, and 2 of C, it gets completely executed. P1 will get completely executed. After completely execution, the previously allocated resources that we were allocated to P1, it will release it. Okay, so we had allocated 2 instances of A to P1, so it will free it after completely execution. So the scenario is P1 has been executed, and the resources, we have 2 more resources of A added to our available system. Okay, this available system. Okay, so this will be like this. The P1 is completed and it has released its resources, and we have 5, 3, 2 available now. Okay, right. So moving further, then we will check for P2. Can we fulfill the need of P2? P2 says I want 6 instances of A, but we only have 5 instances of A. So we cannot actually fulfill the need of P2. P2. So what we do is we will just skip P2 and go to P3. Now, can we fulfill the need of P3? Yes, we have some available more than what the P3 actually needs. P3 just needs 1 instance of B and 1 instance of C. And we have 3 number of B and 2 number of C. So we just assign the required resources to process P3, and process P3 will get completely executed. So you can see here, first of all, we executed P1, and now we are executing P3. Okay, so after P3 gets completely executed, it releases all the resources that we have already allocated to it. So these resources will be added to our available resources, right? So the scenario is P3 is completely executed, P1 is completely executed, and they have released their resources and they are available to us to use. This P3 is removed, P1 is removed, and we have 743 resources still remaining. Okay, and sequence is we first of all executed P1 and then executed P3. Moving on, then we will check for P4. Can we fulfill the need of P4? P4 is saying I want 4 instances of A, 3 instances of B, and 1 instance of C. And we have more than that. So definitely we can fulfill the particular need. So after fulfilling the need of P4, what we will do is we will completely execute P4. So our P4 is completely executed, and P3 is completely executed, P1 is completely executed, and P4 has been, if P4 has been executed, it will release all the resources that we had already assigned to it, that is 2. So will these 2 instances of C will be added to our available block. So the scenario is P4 is done, P3 is done, P1 is done, and we have their available resources. Okay, so this is the scenario. I added 2 to this C. Okay, so we still have now we have 7 instances of A, 4 instances of B, and 5 instances of C. Okay, now we'll go back to our P0. So we will see if we can now fulfill the need of P0. See, we have 7 instances of A. That's what P0 is asking for. 4 of B. That's what P0 is asking for, and 5 instances of C. And the need is less than what we have available in our available block. So we can definitely fulfill its needs. So what we will do is we will allocate the available resources to the P0, and P0 will get completely executed. And after completely execution, the remaining the resources that we had already assigned to P0, it will release it. So this one instance of B is released and added to our available. So now the scenario is our sequence is we have executed P1 first, P3 first, P4 first, and P0 first. Okay, now all the other processes are done. We are remaining with just P2. Okay, so we'll see if we can fulfill the need of P2. This is our available now. We have 7 instances of A, 5 of B, and 5 of C. And P2 is asking for I just need 6 instances of A. So we will just give it that, and P2 will get completely executed. And after that, it will release all. So after releasing, we will add all the resources of P2. This will sum up to 10. Okay, 7 to 10, 5, and this is 5, and this is 7. So you can say see that finally we have same number of resources available that we had initially here after completion of all the processes. And what's our sequence? Our sequence is this: P1, P3, P4, P0, P2. So this sequence is not unique. You can get many sequences like this in the same problem. If we get this sequence, any sequence that if we apply so that we don't get deadlock, then this sequence is called safe sequence. And if this sequence exists, we don't get any deadlock. And if there would have been any situation that we just couldn't provide the needs of any process, in that situation we'll get a deadlock. Okay, I hope you get this. So if you want to know what is the program for this algorithm, let us see the program. Okay, this is the program for Banker's algorithm, right? So I will explain it very shortly. As we had n equal to 5, that is 5 number of processes, and yes, we are assuming the same thing because all the processors are ready to get executed or executing at the same time. Okay, now the thing is we have 5 number of processes, P0 to P4, m equal to 3, that is 3 number of resources ABC, and it is the same thing. This is the allocation matrix. If it is a P1 and P1 needs 2 instances of A, 0 instances of B, and 0 instances of C. So we are using 2D array to save the allocation matrix. Similarly, to represent the maximum needs, we are representing it by 2D array. And what available is saying, available defines the currently available resources. Initially, we had 332, if you remember. We have array f of n, answer of n, and index. F of n stores whether or not the execution is completed, right? Okay. So f of n, if f of n equal to 0, that means the nth process is yet to be completed. And if f of n equal to 1, that means it is already completed. We will store our answer in answer of n. So first of all, what we do is we will calculate the need array, 2D array. In need array, how did we store the need array? We first subtracted the maximum requirement. We first subtracted the current allocation minus maximum from the maximum need. Okay, so that's how we store our need array. So we have updated. Just a second. Is it not visible? Okay, just wait a minute. Is it visible now? Okay, okay. So should I start from beginning? Okay, okay. I'll start from beginning. So this is the program for Banker's algorithm. There are n number of processes we have assigned from. I am taking the same example. N number of processes and m number of resources. So the processes are numbered from P0 to P4, and resources like ABC. It is the same example we have seen before. So the in allocation matrix, we are storing that what is the currently allocated status of all the processes. For example, for P0, there are 0 number of A is assigned, 1 number of B assigned, and 0 numbers of C assigned. Okay. Similarly for all. In maximum 2D array, we are storing the maximum needs of each process. In available array, we are storing the currently available resources. And in f of n, we are storing if the current process is completely executed or it is yet to be executed. For example, if f of k is 0, it says that we are yet to execute this process. And if it is 1, we say that it is completely executed. And we will store our answer in answer array. And first of all, how did we calculate the need array? We just subtracted allocation array minus from the maximum array. That means the process needs maximum something, and we have already allocated something. So if you maximum that, if you subtract that, you will get need array, right? So we are looping 5 times because we have 5 processes to check each process at a time. For ith process, here I represent the number of process. For ith process, if f of I equal to 0, that means if the process is yet to be executed. Okay, if the process is yet to be executed, we will just set flag to 0 initially. And if we check, and then we will check for each resource. If need of A or need of B or need of C is greater than available, that means if we have 5 number of A's and the process needs 6 number of A's, the flag will be set to 1. That is, we can't just provide its complete needs, and it will be and we will break it. Okay. So if the flag is still 0, that means we can still fulfill the needs of our process. Okay. So if we can fulfill the need, what we will do is we will store it in the answer. That is, we can fulfill it, and then we will update our available resources that we will deallocate it from the processes and add up to our avail array. And f of I equal to 1 represent the process is completely executed. Okay. Don't worry, I will share the program with you and we will just print the answer. So let us try to run this program. So you can see the output here. Yes. So this is the output. Following is the safe sequence. The same answer we got before. P1, P3, P4, P0 and P2. Okay. So we'll get back to our slide. So I hope you got the glance of Banker's algorithm and how it works. If you want, I will share the link of the problems. You can solve that by your own. So moving further, why it is called Banker's algorithm? So it is just for your knowledge purpose. Just read it. Banker's algorithm is named so it is because in banking system to check whether a loan can be sanctioned to a person or not. Suppose there are n number of account holders. Okay. There are n number of account holders that contribute to total money of S rupees. Okay. And currently consider the bank has T rupees. Okay. And I want L rupees of loan. So what will bank do is it will subtract my required loan amount from currently amount the bank has, and if this amount is greater than s, if x is greater than s, then my loan will be sanctioned. Because consider if all the n account holders come one day and say we want all our money back, so bank should have s number of amount in their bank. So if their current money and minus my loan is greater than the s, then my loan will be sanctioned. In other words, the bank would never allocate its money in such way that it can no longer satisfy the needs of all its customers. Okay, and the bank would always try to be in a safe state. So that's why it is called Banker's algorithm. Okay, so there is a something called deadlock-free condition operating system. Just read it. If a system has R identical resources, we are considering our resources are identical. It can be different, but number are R. Okay. For example, we have A, B, C. There are R number of A's. Okay, and P process completing for them, and N is the maximum need of each process. So P processes are competing for them to get the access, and there are n maximum need of each process. So we are considering it the maximum need of each process is also same for a particular resource. Okay, so the task is to find the minimum number of resources required so that deadlock will never occur. So this is the formula. If a number of resources is greater than equal to number of processes into n minus 1 plus 1, if this situation holds, we will never get the deadlock. But remember, we are considering something are identical resources, and the maximum need of each process is same. So if you want its explanation, you can just search by yourself, and if you don't find it, just fill the Google form. I will clear it later. Right. Okay, so moving on, there is some concept called resource allocation graph. So what is resource allocation graph? What it says is, if you want to understand the state of system instead of using the table as in Banker's algorithm, you could represent the same information in a graph. The graph is called resource allocation graph. So sometimes back, uh, we saw that we just draw a table to know what is the state of our system, which resources are already allocated to which system, and which resources are available. So instead of drawing a table, what we can do is we can draw a graph, and by a graph we can know the current state of a system, right? So the resource allocation graph is explained to us what is the state of the system in terms of processes and resources, like how many resources are available, how many are allocated, and what is the request of each process. Okay, so how to draw it? There are graph contains only two things, vertices and edges. So this graph is just like any other normal graph. It also contains vertices and edges. So there are two types of vertices. First one is process vertex, and second one is resource vertex. So there is something called single instance type resource and multi-resource instance type resource. So single instance type means there is only one instance of that particular resource in your system. For example, if you have only one CPU, then this system is called single instance. Okay, and the multi-resources are the instances of that particular resources are multiple, more than one. For example, register in your CPU, you have many registers. Okay, so this is called multi-resource instance type. So multi-resource can be shareable because they are more in number, more than one, right? So this is how the process vertex is represented by circle, and the resource vertex is represented by a rectangle. Okay, the single dot means we have single instance, multiple dot means we have multiple instances of that particular resource in our system. Okay, now edges, we will see edges. Now see these edges. If the edge is going from the resource to the process, what that means is the particular resource is assigned to that process. If the arrow is going from resource to process. In other case, if the arrow is going from the process to the resource, that means we are requesting for the process for the resource. For example, this P1 already has R1, so the arrow is from R1 to P1, and P1 is requesting for R2, so the arrow is from P1 to R2. So just by looking this diagram, you can say that this is a deadlock, because see, this is P1 and it is holding R1. Sorry, it is holding R1, and it is asking for R2, and similar case for P2. So this is a single resource type with deadlock. So this is deadlock, and both the resources are single instance type. So we will see one example with multi instances. Okay, so this is the multi instance. There are two instances of R2. Okay, so one instance is allocated to P3 and one is to P2. Another system is same. The R1 is allocated to P1. P1 is requesting for R2, and P2 is requesting for R1 and already allocated R2. Okay, so can you guess? Will deadlock happen? We can guess it, right? Because see, P3 is not requesting for any resource, so I can say that without any delay, P3 will get executed. Okay, and when the P3 will get executed, R2 will get released, and this R2 will be allocated to P1. So P1 has R1 and it gets R2 and it will get completed. So after P1 will get completed, it will just release R1, and after that P2 will get completed. So sequence will be P3, P1 and P2. So in this sequence, we can execute all the processes, so there will be no deadlock. We can see the same from the table. There are one allocation of R1, one allocation to R2 to P2, and these are requests. And P3 is done first, then P1 and P2. The same like we did in Pankhurst algorithm, right? Okay. So further, we will see a concept called starvation versus deadlock. What is starvation and what is deadlock? So consider this system. What is saying is P1 is already assigned with R1, P2 is already assigned with R2, and P3 is requesting for R1 and R2. See the arrows, okay? And this R1 and R2 are single instances, by the way. So how can we determine the sequence? First of all, P1 or P2 will get executed. Consider the P1 executes first. So P1 will get executed. It will release the R1, and P2 will get executed because they don't need any further resources to get completion. And after P1 and P2 are executed, they will release R1 and R2. And after that, P3 will get executed. So what it's saying is P3 is getting delayed for getting executed, but it is not, it is a finite time. The finite time can be anything, 1 second, 10 seconds, 10 minutes, 1 year, 2 years, 1,000 years. But it is a finite time, okay? It is not infinite. We can still determine that after execution of P1 and P2, the resources will be deallocated and allocated to P3, okay? So we can just determine the time. It is finite. So this situation is called starvation. On the other hand, this situation, we can't determine when the resources will be free and when the whole process will get to completion. So this is the actual deadlock. So this is the difference between deadlock and starvation. Right. Okay. So how the operating system decides how to allocate the resources to different processes. So there are two types, two methods, the resource partitioning approach and pool-based approach. So this is basically a theory part. You have to just read it. There is no, the whole deadlock is, I guess, this theory part. Only Banker's algorithm, you can get numericals if you are preparing for GATE or any other competitive exam or even in interviews. But the most of the part is theory. So which are the processes that which are the methods that can be followed to allocate the resources to processes? So first one is resource partitioning approach. In this approach, the operating system decides beforehand that what resources should be allocated to which user program. It divides the resources in the system to many resource partition, where each partition may include various resources. For example, 1 MB memory, disk blocks, and printer. So it is saying is before the execution of process, before the starting of the execution, we will just partition the available resources. For example, memory, we'll partition the memory and all the resources and we'll allocate to it, okay, particular process. So what is the disadvantage of this process? If we are allocating many resources, many partition to that particular process, and if that process doesn't require that many partition, so our resources can get wasted, okay. So this resource partition technique is very rarely used. The second one is pool-based approach. It is an efficient method. It is actually a dynamic method that in this approach, there is a common pool of resources and the operating system checks the allocation status in the resource table whenever a program makes a request for a resource. If the resource is free, it allocates the resource to the program. It is a general approach. The process is running and it is dynamically requesting for a resource and operating system is checking whether or not the process the resource is free, and if it is free, the resource will be get allocated to that particular process. So there are two methods. Okay. So our last concept is the approaches to detect deadlocks in distributed system. So first of all, what are distributed systems? I will give you the brief idea. Consider now you have your own laptop, your own machine, and you are running all the processes and writing program, running program, and storing the program in a same machine. So what distributed system is, you have the collection of nodes, that is collection of machines that are running on a, their communication on a network. They're communicating on a network. Okay. So there are multiple nodes, one laptop, two laptop, or three laptops that are communicating through a network, and you can just distribute their work to run program, to store program among themselves. Okay, this is the brief idea of distributed systems. So how to handle deadlocks in distributed systems? There are three major methods to handle them. The first one is centralized approach. What centralized approach says, there is only one responsible resource to detect deadlock. Okay, that means if you are with multiple nodes, only one node is responsible to detect the deadlock. The advantage of this approach is that it is simple and easy to implement. It is obvious that if we are giving the responsibility to only one node, it is easy to implement. But the drawback is there is a single point failure. That means if the node that is handling the deadlock is failed, then your deadlock will never get detected. Okay. The second approach is distributed approach. So what is distributed approach? In this approach, different nodes work together to detect deadlocks. So if there are 5 nodes, consider there are 3 nodes that are working for detecting deadlocks. So in this situation, there is no single point failure. If one of the node fails, you still have 2 other nodes to handle the deadlock, okay, detect the deadlock. So as the workload is equally divided among all the nodes. So in a distributed system, the workload is divided between all the nodes. As I said earlier, if you have only one resource or only one node, you do all your system performances in only one node, but in distributed system they are distributed among all the nodes. The third one is hierarchical approach. So this approach is most advantageous. It is the combination of both centralized and distributed approaches of deadlock detection in a distributed system. So in this approach, some selected nodes or cluster of nodes are responsible for deadlock detection, and these selected nodes are controlled by a single node. This means we have centralized approach. That is, only one node is controlling them, but the workload is distributed in multiple nodes. So this is the combination of centralized approach and distributed approach. Okay. So this is the best approach to handle deadlocks in distributed system. Okay, so this is today's summary. First of all, what we saw the deadlock. Deadlock is a situation where a set of processes are blocked because each process is holding a resource and waiting for another resource acquired by some other process. So we saw the example of bank and the trains. So just remember them. It will be easy for you to remember. And second one is necessary condition. What are the necessary conditions for handling deadlocks? They are mutual exclusion, no preemption, hold and wait, and circular wait. Then we saw the deadlock handling methods. If a deadlock occurs or before occurring the deadlock, how can we handle it? We just ignore the deadlock, or we prevent the deadlock, or we use Banker's algorithm to avoid the deadlock, or we detect and recover the deadlock. Okay. Then we saw something called Banker's algorithm in detail. We saw a numerical. The Banker's algorithm is used to check if safe sequence exists or not. It is a deadlock avoidance and detection algorithm. And then we saw a resource allocation graph, that how can you represent the same information that is in table in the graph. Okay. So the resource allocation graph is a pictorial representation of state of the system. Then we saw resource allocation technique for processes that is used by operating system. So there are two major methods operating system used to allocate the resources to processes. The one is resource partitioning approach and a pool based approach. The partition approach is static and pool based is dynamic. The last one is approaches to detect deadlocks in a distributed system. We saw a centralized approach, a distributed approach, and then and a hierarchical approach. The best one is hierarchical. So okay, that is it from my side. If you have any doubts, you can ask here, or you can just fill the Google form. We will be providing you sometimes later. And I just recommend you, we will be providing the link of YouTube channel and we'll be uploading it in the YouTube. So please try to go through it again and check how the how the Banker's algorithm questions are done. And I will also provide you the links of problems and important concepts, and just go through it. Okay. If you have doubt, you can ask, or you can just fill in the Google form. So thank you guys for your participation. If you don't have any doubts, I will wait you will wait for Google form. We will provide you. And stay tuned. We still have 2 days remaining in our session, and we have a surprise for you for the Sunday session. So stay tuned with us.